Good evening. Welcome, everyone. We have a few more coming in, but we are so excited to have you guys tonight. Um, this is the first event for the Reading League Kentucky, and we've just been anxiously waiting, being able to get started and bring all of this information to you and be able to share that. I am Melissa Cupp. I am the Reading League Kentucky president, and started this journey a couple of years ago. It was actually, I was looking back March 2023, when Kelly McLeod and I emailed Andrea at National and asked about if anyone had expressed interest in starting a reading league in Kentucky. And she said that one person had expressed interest, and she's also on our board, and Laura Burns. And so she asked us, to find out if there was interest within our state, and there was great interest within our state. So um, we started the process and the application, and here we are today. So we're so excited to be here with you guys and to be sharing um, structured literacy and trying to, meet this mission that's up on the screen right now. Our mission is to advance the awareness, understanding, and use of evidence-aligned reading instruction throughout the state of Kentucky. So that is not only our goal, but that mirrors the Reading League Nationals goal. And then this just kind of shows some of the things that the Reading League National does and provides for everyone. Professional development. You can go in and select certain things that you want to know more about. Those are paid. Um, you have to pay to sign up for those, but it is live with an instructor, and I think 2 hours long and very well worth it. They have school partnerships. I know our vice president, Amanda, you have a school partnership in your division, correct?
Yes, we do. This is our fourth year in partnership with National. It's a great partnership.
They do syllabi refinement for universities to make sure that the literacy programs for new teachers are robust, and that we're teaching new teachers what they need to know to be able to provide structured literacy for our our students. Curriculum evaluation guides, some of you may have seen those that have come out, where if your district is looking for a high quality instructional resource, they have some that have agreed to let the Reading League review their materials, and you can go in and see how they rate according to the Reading League, which how they rate on the in structured literacy. Then the Reading League Journal, that's something that you can also purchase. And that is, I want to say $100 for the year subscription. And then they do coffee chats throughout the year where you can join for free and learn along with others who've read that article, talk to the author of the article, that kind of thing. And they have a Reading Buddies. That's a YouTube cartoon. It's almost like the new Sesame Street. So it is wonderful. My kindergartners love it, and we watch it. There are different episodes based on whichever sound you're studying. Then the compass is on their website, and it has information you can see over the picture on the side, information for all different stakeholders. So if you're interested in a specific area, adolescent literacy, there is information and help there for you. Then they also have the annual summit and the annual conference. The summit is always in April, and the conference is always in October. So while they can be pricey, it is a very good investment because there's just so much you learn there. So that's just a little bit about the Reading League National. I wanted to take a minute and pass it over to Nicole Campbell. She is on our board and she is with collaborative classrooms. And they helped to um, provide money for all of our startup fees to start our nonprofit, and in order to be our um, first chapter event host. So they're hosting this event tonight. And so I thought I'd pass it over to her for just a minute to share a little bit about collaborative classroom.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks for being here, everybody. My name's Nicole Campbell, and I am a manager of educational partnerships for Collaborative Classroom here in the great state of Kentucky. We're a nonprofit curriculum organization. We offer core reading programs and an intervention-based foundational skills decoding program called SIPS. We are thrilled tonight to be the host of our very first event with the Reading League Kentucky. Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you so much, Nicole. All right. Without further ado, let's get to our topic. Tonight we have Christie Biggerstaff here with us. Christie Biggerstaff is the Kentucky Department of Education Director of Early Literacy. Christie oversees the entirety of the Division of Early Literacy. Christie's charge is ensuring implementation of the Read to Succeed Act across the Commonwealth, with the goal being improved student literacy outcomes. Christie is a former elementary reading teacher, assistant principal, and before joining KDE in 2022, she served as the Chief Academic Officer of Monroe County Schools. So welcome, Christie. We're excited to hear about the Read to Succeed Act and all that Kentucky's already trying to do to help the literacy growth of our students.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for that introduction. It's really an honor for me to be here present at the first virtual Kentucky Reading League event and to support the work that you all are doing. So I want to thank the board for the honor of being the speaker this evening. You can only go up from here. No doubt. So I'm sure you will have many, many more wonderful guests and speakers and hope we can, the Division of Early Literacy can support you in any way in doing that. You know, having people to come on after a very long day of teaching and working, you know, it being really late in the evening and still being dedicated to come on and learn. So I want to thank all of the people that are here tonight to hear me speak and to learn more about what we're doing and some of the charges that we have. I do want to say before I get started that if you have a question, if one of the slides makes you have it, you know, elicits a question, you can put that in the chat. I think the chat feature is working, or you can jot it down. And I'm going to hopefully get through this quick enough that we're going to have some time in the end to answer any questions that you might have. I do have several of my team members present, and they have been in a district today supporting a district. Wave if you're a member of the Division of Early Literacy. I have several on here. So happy to have them on here. So thank you for being here as well. And the one thing that I will take credit in all of this work, and you will hear me say this if you've ever heard me speak, is I hired people smarter than me to help lead this work in the state of Kentucky. And they are brilliant, passionate people and could not ask for a better team. So that will help me, I'm sure, answer any questions that you might have. So I'm just going to, for the sake of time, jump right in. We're going to talk about some literacy shifts tonight and some of the work with the Division of Early Literacy. But I do want to very quickly introduce you to the Division of Early Literacy because you might not know exactly what we're doing or some of the work that we are associated with. So I have an assistant director She is also on this call. My right hand, Dr. Ashley Hill, she is in Corbin. And then I have 5 state regional literacy directors situated across the state. What makes the Division of Early Literacy a little special is that we are truly positioned in Kentucky from far west to far east, northern to southern. So we have directors that are working specifically with those regions in our state. And they oversee 23 state literacy coaches who are placed in what we call partnership schools across the state. And those partnership schools are schools of greatest need who might have a very high third grade novice rate or a very low third grade proficient distinguished rate, that we have literacy coaches in there that are helping them on the ground improve teaching practices and HQIR implementation. And then we also, new to us, we have 6 regional principal support leaders that are working with our principals, and I'll show you their faces too here in just a minute. And we're adding 2 more of those in July. We're also adding 13 more literacy coaches in July. So our moonshot goal in the Division of Early Literacy is to have 80 coaches statewide that we can truly help schools in our state with the greatest need. So here are the beautiful faces of my state regional literacy directors. And again, they are passionate about improving literacy. They have so much knowledge and expertise. And I want you to know which kind of cooperative they're attached to, because that kind of designates the region. So if they are in your region, please feel free to reach out to them. They want to help you. They want to support schools and districts and help them improve literacy within their district. So reach out, and they would love to support you in any way that they can. I also wanted to show you the faces of our regional principal support leaders. These are working through and I'll talk about it more here in just a minute, our Kentucky Early Literacy Leadership Network. We love a good acronym in this profession, so we call it Kentucky Ellen. So Kentucky Ellen is a network that we launched this past year, and we learned very quickly that we can help a lot of the practices in the classrooms, but if our administrators are not knowledgeable and bought into the literacy practices that need to happen within their schools, then change really can't happen at the degree that we want it to. So these regional principal support leaders are really helping our principals throughout the state think about leadership moves they can make within their schools to help support literacy practices. And then just a couple of things, and I'm going to go into these more in detail later in the presentation, but it always kind of blows my mind when you put pen to paper about the things that we are doing in the state. And I think a lot of times people don't realize or understand that a lot of these things are connected together. So we are doing the Kentucky Reading Academies, and I hope you are familiar with those. And we're offering letters. I'll talk about it a little bit later in depth, but we've got educators and administrators. And then we also are partnering with TNTP to give a Science of Reading secondary course. So the secondary course, we had so many secondary educators reach out to us and say, we'd love to participate in letters, but our funding source does not allow us to allow middle and high school teachers. It's only K through 5 with letters. So this was a way that we could offer more Science of Reading to our secondary educators. And then we also, as I spoke to earlier, have the Kentucky Ellen, and we offered 3 sessions to our districts. We have 33 districts involved in that this year. We hope to add more districts next year. The feedback from that has been overwhelmingly positive. So much so that we had the 3 sessions planned out, 2 in person and 1 virtually. They said, can we have more? So then we created 4 what we called community of practices that really honed in on specific leadership moves, like how to lead PLCs with unit internalization and lesson internalization, those kind of things. So we developed those. And again, I would love for all of our districts to participate in that. It has been really, really well received. Then we have the Kentucky Reads to Succeed Summer Conference, and I'll give you the deets on that as well. So excited about our upcoming conference that will happen on June 13th. I talked about our literacy coaching model with our Division of Early Literacy. We'll dive into the early literacy assessments here in just a little bit. We have a ton of resources that I hope you know about, that I'm going to call attention to a couple of them. We have an early literacy newsletter that we send out. And then we also have Dale office hours that we target administrators, because we know that teachers a lot of times cannot pull away from a classroom during the day, but we offer those office hours to really talk about HQLR implementation and Read to Succeed, and just gives a way for anybody to hop on and say, hey, I just have a quick question, and ask that question or hear others ask questions. So let's talk about the Read to Succeed. The reason that Dale was created, and the reason that I was brought on was to oversee the Read to Succeed Act. And that happened in 2022. And the goal is simple. It's to support evidence-based early literacy instruction throughout the Commonwealth. So we know a lot of those pieces and parts, you're putting them into your classrooms with the reading improvement plan, your universal screeners and diagnostics. So let's talk about the why, because anytime that I speak about the Read to Succeed Act, I try to pull back to why are we targeting early literacy? So on the screen, you can see the KSA proficiency results back to 2016. I did not have the slide space to pull back numerous dates, but I could pull back way, way back in our KSA data and show you that for a long, long time in the state of Kentucky, that about half of our students are reading at proficient levels. Of course, COVID come in and did what COVID did to all of us, and that dropped significantly. We bounced back, but bounced back to about around half again. So first of all, everybody that's on this call, I don't think there's an educator alive that would say, we're good with half of our students being proficient. We're okay with that. I feel good about that. Like, none of us would be that way. So we know that doing the same thing over and over is not going to get us different results. So we have to change what we are doing in Kentucky when it comes to literacy in order to change the results that we have on the screen. We know the significance of being able to read proficiently at third grade. The research is there, and it's undeniable that our students are geared towards having success in multiple aspects of their life if they can be a proficient reader by third grade. Just another kind of data point, and as we look at the NAEP data for our fourth grade students, only 32% of those students are reading at proficient and above. And numbers are numbers, and I can throw a lot of numbers at you, but when you think about going into a classroom and you think about having 20 students in that classroom and those numbers put onto faces, that means that only 6 of those 20 students are able to read proficiently. And that really hones it in for me when you think about a classroom full of Kentucky kids. So let me stop talking for just a minute, and I want you to do some thinking, and we'll pull all of our collective brain cells together that we have left at this part of the evening. I want you to read some of the text. You don't have to read the whole paragraph, but a couple of sentences on the screen. This comes from a grade 3 CKLA unit about ancient Greece. So I want you to take a minute, and when you come to a blank, I want you to either out loud or in your head say the word or in replace of that blank. So I'm going to be quiet for just a second and let you read a couple of sentences. Okay. I think you can get that. You probably can't get very far reading like that. So reading that paragraph, that's about an 80% accuracy if you take all those blanks into consideration. I'm going to put the actual text on the screen. But what I want to say to you about that is that complete version that you just attempted to read, the bold words represent, on the previous slides, the bold words represent knowledge-based vocabulary words. So it's hard to comprehend when you don't have the knowledge or the information that you need to know about those words. And it's not enough for our students to be able to decode words. They have to have knowledge about what they're reading. So sometimes I put a slide on my deck that has to do with cricket. Now, I don't know if any of you all are expert cricket players, but Christie Biggerstaff is not. So when I read that paragraph about cricket, I thought, I have no idea what they're talking about because I did not have the background knowledge to really comprehend. And that's really what this is about. And just on another note, I will tell on myself, I won't tell you how long ago, but when I was a fourth and fifth grade reading teacher, I had goals in my classroom that they would read with 80% accuracy. And that's what that feels like. I would always say, I'm going to, back in the day when we had to put those type of goals on our board, my students are going to read this text with 80% accuracy. But, now I know that's certainly not a good goal to have, especially when they have complex texts that require that background knowledge in front of them. So the Senate bill, I'll talk about another bill really quick. Senate Bill 156, that required the adoption of a high quality K through 3 comprehensive reading program. And if you have a high quality instructional resource, then you should see evidence of all of the following, the 5 components of literacy and the 4 instructional shifts that I'm about to talk to you about tonight. And I know you're probably very familiar with this. I hope you've seen it before, but very quickly, just to kind of set that foundation, the simple view of reading is a formula demonstrating widely accepted view of reading that has 2 basic components, and that is word recognition, decoding, and language comprehension. So research shows that the 5 components, and I'll just name them, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Oop, I clicked too far. Are necessary for a comprehensive literacy program. So as children learn to read, they must develop in all 5 of those areas in order to be successful. So the simple view formula makes a clear that strong reading instruction cannot occur unless students have the decoding skills and the language comprehension abilities are strong. It takes both. So let's dive into the meat of our topic tonight and talk about instructional shifts in literacy. So kind of to help guide and drive the goal to improve literacy outcomes in Kentucky, we have to shift. So we talked about how the way we've done things in Kentucky is not working for us up to this point. So we have to shift and do something different. And it has to align more closely to what the research is telling us. We have to strengthen our Tier 1 instruction. So these instructional shifts that you see on the screen are complexity, evidence, knowledge, and then regular and systematic approach to foundational skills. So we're going to look a little closer at complexity. I'm going to try my best to give you a basic understanding of each of those instructional shifts that we have on the screen. So when we talk about text complexity, we talk about quantitative measures, we talk about qualitative measures, and then we talk about reader and task. So quantitative meaning looking at the readability of a text. Qualitative meaning like the knowledge demands, the language features, text structures, those kind of things in a text. And then reader and task considers like outside factors that might impact the difficulty of that said text. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about complex text. So the quote on the screen talks about why the shift of complexity is so important. I'll read it to you. It says the clearest differentiator in reading between students who are college ready and students who are not is the ability to comprehend complex text. So the ACT study that was done, you might be familiar with it. It was called Reading Between the Lines, really drew out the difference between the students who were successful on the ACT and the students who were not. And the students who were successful could comprehend more complex text. So that means that we have to provide all of our students with authentic practice, reading complex text with a teacher support, of course. And I give this, my team is going to get sick of me saying this analogy, but it's one of my favorite analogies. But I talk about a sink. So think about a sink in your home. And those of you who have children, and when they were younger, You do not go through your home and bring in a contractor and say, okay, we're going to lower these sinks so we can have our, 3-year-old to reach the sink to wash their hands. No, sinks are a standard size. And what we did as parents, and I think what most of you all probably did, is we got one of those little step stools that we put in front of the sink so the kids could step onto that step stool and reach the sink in order to wash their hands. So essentially, what we do sometimes as educators is we lower that sink, we lower that bar unintentionally, but we want them to be successful. But what we really need to do is our kids can interact with complex text. They can interact with all of these knowledge-based texts. And we've got to make sure that we give them the scaffolds or the appropriate supports to get them to reach that standard or that sink. I call it the bless your heart. In Kentucky, like around in my area, do you all ever say bless your heart? Like we bless them, we bless their hearts. They just can't, and they can. And I will say, as an entirely different added antidote, that a lot of times when teachers get a new HQIR and they see these texts, they're like, there's no way. But they are in the state of Kentucky able to read these texts. And I'm in classrooms a lot. My team's in classrooms a lot, and they can. We've just got to give them the appropriate supports to get them there. So why is this shift to complexity so important? And it means that we've got to provide all students with that authentic practice, and we have to ensure that they have access to complex text. So on this graph, we're talking about read alouds. Now, something that I hear a lot of people say is, I don't understand why this HQIR is having me to read aloud so much. So I want you to understand why we have a lot of read alouds in our HQIR, especially in K through 2 curriculum. So complex text in the K through 2 space is generally explored through read alouds. And read alouds allow students to develop that deep knowledge, exposure to more sophisticated syntax and vocabulary that can be found in texts that they read themselves. So research also indicates that this will support student understanding of complex text when they've cracked enough of the code to read the print work themselves. So from birth to middle school at about age 13, students are better able to comprehend what they hear over what they read. And I find that true in my own kids as well. I can speak something and they can understand that sometimes a lot better than if I was to print that out and let them actually read it and comprehend. So that means in early grades in particular, we need to develop our students' listening comprehension by read aloud text that build knowledge of the world and have rich academic vocabulary. And if we don't allow students that exposure to high quality text and read alouds in early grades, we can potentially limit their reading comprehension abilities down the road. So that was complexity in a nutshell. Let's go to the second shift, and we're going to talk about including opportunities for students to read, write, and speak grounded in evidence from the text. So using text-based evidence is one of the most important skills for students entering college. So most college and career writing requires students to take a position or inform others by citing evidence, not providing personal opinions. We need to think about text in reading lessons almost like a sun in our solar system, and the other lesson components kind of revolve around the meaning of the text. Let's dive in just a little bit deeper. So increasing research shows that teaching individual skills and strategies and standards are not the driver of instruction. I will tell you now that Christie Biggerstaff used to be a standards check it off, skill and drill. And that's the way that I thought kids learned to read more efficiently. Like I'm going to practice them we are going to know where to find that text feature. Because, I was a 4th and 5th grade reading. But comprehension does not occur as a result of teaching students a set of skills that they practice. They might get really good at it for a moment, but that doesn't transfer over when they get older. And the reason why we start with complex text kind of in the middle from our HQIR and use the standards in service of understanding that. So let me put it this way. If you've read a book lately, just for, or a piece of text, for example, in your position. Did you read it to learn about an isolated standard? Were you reading it to check off a skill? No, none of us do that in our real lives. You considered multiple aspects and elements throughout as you were reading it. You were not reading it to check off a standard. So here's another example. Let's look at this example of how this comes to play in the primary classroom. So what does this look like when we center the text? So I want you to read example 1. Now example 2. Okay. What's the function of each question and which supports students in developing a deeper understanding of the text? So think about that in just a minute. Which example would give me a deeper understanding of the text? And I think we would all say example number 2, right? The text to self questions feel good. They feel fun to ask, right? And teachers, we often default to them, especially when the text gets complex. We want them to have that connection. What is this? Which one is your favorite? We want to try to connect them. But the second question requires students to use the given text evidence to better understand the text. That's centering the text. The first question is opinion. Really, it doesn't require evidence, and it doesn't require them to support their understanding of the text. It's just an opinion. One more kind of example here. Asking the right questions is tough, and asking students to think about and wonder about what they've read and integrate it within what they know and how they think and other things is key. So asking students to return to a text and find a one-word response is not truly deepening their comprehension. Adopted HQIRs come with great questions, but they're only words if students do not get a chance to answer them. So sometimes we get in a habit of kind of skipping some of those column questions in our HQIRs when really they're there for a purpose. And it means the teachers must know the purpose of the reading the text and what they want students to take away from it. So when teachers pick and choose which questions to ask or maybe improvise and do not use the questions provided, many of the students do not get the opportunity to engage in that text-based task. I was in a classroom today, and a lot of the questions that she was asking came straight from the HQR, and she was able to, turn and talk to your partner about, and the engagement and the conversations those kids were having was so encouraging and high level because they were pulling directly from text evidence. And I want you to hear me say this. The use of evidence is truly about equity. All students have an equal chance to learn, discuss, engage in meaningful text and task when they stay in the confines of a complex text provided, rather than just going rogue and supplementing and supplanting text from other resources. Gone are the days, and I required, as an administrator, I will tell you honestly, like, we were not, as educators, trained to be curriculum developers. That, I didn't have a class in college that said how to develop valid and reliable curriculum. If you did, bravo, but that was not offered in my university. So, we're not trained for that. We are trained in the art of teaching. And that's really where our bread is buttered in terms of how we deliver instruction. So I, as a principal, had my teachers erroneously to, search and scour the web and spend hours and hours and hours of their time looking for resources that a lot of times were not at grade level, not on purpose, but just because that's what we asked them to do and that's what was available. So let's talk about the shift of knowledge very quickly. And I'm trying to be mindful of the time. So I'm going to try to get a little bit quicker pace going because I want time for you all to ask me questions if you have them. So we're going to talk about building knowledge, and we touched on that just a little bit, but I want to clarify what we mean by knowledge. It's much more than just rote vocabulary and reading a bunch of nonfiction text. To fully understand something rather than just knowing a few things about it, you have to have a wide knowledge base. So I'm going to put some text on the screen. I'm going to get your brains going again. And I want you to read that text through just once. And when you finished, I want you to think about the topic of what you just read. Okay. So your task is determine the topic of this paragraph. Here you go. Anybody know the topic of your paragraph? How about now? Does it make sense now? Yeah, you're able to understand, right? Because unfortunately, we're adults and we know about doing laundry. So we know we have some background knowledge that helps us comprehend this. Here's another example. So I want you to, and I know it's small, but there's two little pieces of text on this picture. I want you to read that text and think about what it means. Now, a lot of times when I ask this question, people will say things like, things that are in the, if I'm swimming in the ocean, it's horrifying of what I can't see. That's kind of what they gather from that. It's horrifying not knowing where the shark is, right? Because if I'm going to be in the vicinity of a shark fin, I would like to see it rather than knowing it's there and I can't see it. But really, like that is in a different context when I add the also equally tiny little text underneath that says exploring the ecosystem also threatens human lives. And then for a living planet, visit wwf.org. So honestly, when that appears, context matters. So what this is really about, it's different than maybe what we thought initially. First, the background knowledge is important. We know a shark fin, we know sharks live in the ocean, but it takes knowledge about the world, like the disappearing ocean habitat and what the World Wildlife Federation is, to really understand the true context of this ad is saying that sharks going extinct is truly terrifying for our ecosystem. It's not what we initially thought it was. So context and that not background knowledge truly matters. So the key point here is knowledge is more than just putting more informational text in front of students. It's about building students' knowledge of the world. To fully understand something rather than just knowing a few things about it, you have to have a wide knowledge base. And this is different than a list of facts or a word list or spending one day reading about killer whales and then the next day reading about pollination and then one day a text about the cultural differences between different Indian tribes. It really requires an intentional and sequential building of knowledge about a topic. So that leads us to our last shift. And that is a regular and systematic approach to foundational skills, including print concepts, phonological awareness, phonics, word recognition, and fluency. So we want to see lessons that are situated clearly within a systematic scope and sequence. That will help the foundational skill development. So instead of using text to determine the sound or spelling to teach, which would happen in incidental phonics, systematic instruction progresses through a continuum of skills in a specific order designed in the curriculum. So the scope and sequence builds from simple to complex, taking advantage of previous learning and supports students to discriminate between easily confused letters and sounds. When I was taught sounds, I basically, it was not in any kind of sequence or order. The order sequence that I was taught sounds was with the alphabet. The alphabet train on the top of the classroom wall. Do you all ever remember those? The ABC with the pictures beside of it. And we talked about the letter A more than we really talked about the sound that A made. And that, if we did talk about a sound, it was in a apple, apple, but it was more about the letter than it really was about the sound. So you can see this is an example of a systematic scope and sequence. So in kindergarten, students first learn the least ambiguous and then most frequent spellings for the sounds, like the S in sit and dress. And then in grade 1, it gets a little bit, they add a little bit more ambiguous and less frequently used spellings, like the S in bicycle and in lettuce. And then in grade 2, that gets even more complicated when we talk about the S in scissors and the S in listen. I feel like I'm in a phonics classroom now with you all tonight. So in order to have that, we need regular practice with decodable readers. And that's a crucial linchpin of student practice in foundational skills. And a decodable reader really gets a bad rap a lot of times. They will say, those are boring, and they don't allow for any kind of excitement but to those students who are learning to read, they're not boring. They're boring to you because you're an adult and you know how to read, but to them, they need those decodable readers because those young readers need that balance of support and independence. And they provide that instructional support of only asking students to apply skills they've been taught and practiced, and not, introducing a lot of things that they haven't been taught and practiced. But like all good tools, it's all about how we use them to practice. So let's go into thinking about when they don't have that practice and there's large skill gaps. So this is one of my favorite slides that I usually talk about because it always blows my mind. When we think about intervention, and many of us have students that need intervention, if we have students that have access to a high quality instructional resource, truly it's difficult to intervene out of a tier 1 problem. So when we do have a high quality instructional resource and we are implementing that as we are supposed to, then that will help prevent a lot of those gaps that our students currently have. So you could take a look at the screen. Kindergarten, if you have a student that has a skill gap there, generally it takes 15 to 30 minutes over a short amount of time to close that gap. But jump all the way to 3rd grade. And if you have a student that has a gap, it will take 90 minutes to 3 hours per day over a long period of time to close that gap. I would like for anybody that has 3 hours a day in their classroom to work with a student to let me know. I want to know how that's possible, because it's not. I mean, we can't do that. So true prevention is not waiting for bad things to happen. It's preventing things from happening in the first place. So a comprehensive reading program grounded in the 5 components and the 4 instructional shifts equals prevention. So that is the instructional shifts, and I have about 15 minutes left. So I'm going to quickly highlight just a couple of things in the Division of Early Literacy that I want you to know about, and then I hopefully will have some time to answer any questions that you might have. So on the screen, you can see that's part of the Read to Succeed Act, the Reading Improvement Plan. We, on our web pages, have the screener and approved screener and diagnostics. Hopefully you all are all familiar with those and utilize those. We do have a copy of an example of a reading improvement plan. There's a lot of resources there if you're really struggling with that, and we plan to build out more resources too. But how to truly think about progress monitoring and that kind of thing. There is a presentation done by Jan Sellers that's on our webpage that talks about the Reading Improvement Plan that hopefully you will find helpful. There's some notes and slides that she includes in that presentation as well. And then, of course, we have a Read at Home Family Plan Guide, and that is an example. You can develop your own, but I think that is a great example with some really easy activities that our parents can do with kids. It's one of those resources that you can print and utilize as you see fit. I talked about the Kentucky Reading Academies earlier. I have been getting a ton of emails, and that makes my heart happy. But I have been getting a ton of emails saying, are we having letters cohort 4? I'm interested in cohort 4. We've had over 6,000 educators and administrators to take letters and currently taking letters. That is phenomenal. We are going to have a cohort 4. I've got some more information about it in just a second, but I also wanted to tell you the Reach to Succeed conference. I've got it. I've got the highlight reel in there. I'm going to send this presentation, Melissa, to you, and hopefully you can send it to anybody that signed up for this event tonight, but that will be able to be clickable, hopefully to take them to some of these things that I'm talking about. We had over 1,500 to attend our first summer conference, and we're hoping for that much and more this coming year. And I'll talk about that in just a second. We also have developing skilled middle and high school readers. Those sessions live on our webpage. So if you know a secondary educator that might be interested in that, it has like 6 different online sessions that they can go through that's housed on our webpage. So cohort 4 registration will open in May. We will have a more limited registration this year because I only have a certain amount of license. Up until this year, I've let anybody and everybody kind of sign up that wanted to, but I am going to have a more limited amount of licenses this year. So you all know that have taken letters. It is a heavy lift. It is 2 years. It is a true commitment. I hope what I hear most people saying, and I hope that you would say too, that it's a lot of hard work, but it is worth it. And I think that's what I hear a lot of people say when they have taken letters. So we will have the letters for educators and letters for administrators. The registration will open in May, and that will be housed in the Kentucky Reading Academy's webpage on KDE, that registration when it opens. And this is our summer reading conference, the Kentucky Reach to Succeed. We are thrilled to have Miss Anita Archer to be our keynote speaker. Tara Griffith, who is on this call, is the program manager for the Kentucky Reach to Succeed conference, and she has worked hard, and her team, Miss Whitney and Amelia, have worked really hard to develop sessions. They are just out of this world. And I guarantee you, if you come, you are going to walk away with some new information, with some learning, hopefully with an excited attitude toward meeting your kids the next year. That registration is open. We already have almost 1,000 people registered for that event. There is a limit on that because we are limited in terms of how many people we can have at that conference because of our space. The best part of it is the sessions, but I have to say this because a lot of people think this is the best part. It's free, absolutely free to Kentucky 12, K through 12 public educators. We will have dedicated sessions for elementary, secondary educators, and administrators. So if you know of principals that would be interested in this, encourage them to attend as well. Something you may not know about, and we've not talked a lot about, but I want this group to know it's coming, is the statewide Reading Research Center. It's been established, and that's out of U of L under the leadership of Dr. Amy Lingo. Basically, they're going to help us evaluate like comprehensive research agenda. They're gonna put out information about reading models, instructional resources. So really a partner with us to help keep advancing literacy, because as we know better, then we do better, right? So they're going to help us develop those resources and research documents. The resources that I talked about earlier all live in this web page that this QR code is showing. Again, I will make sure that this presentation is sent out to all the participants if that's possible. That all lives in the Early Literacy Resource webpage. Sign up for the Early Literacy newsletter, and that's the QR code, sorry, for the Early Literacy newsletter. That's where a lot of our resources also are highlighted and talked about. So very excited to keep adding to that. One of my favorite resources that we have, if you've not seen it, please go see it. It is the key actions for meeting needs of all K through 3 readers and writers. And this highlights a lot of the practices that we utilize sometimes, we have in the past. Maybe we don't know that we shouldn't be utilizing anymore. So it really kind of talks about those myths and talks about moving from ineffective practices to effective practices. It's a fantastic document, and I hope that you will go and see that if you've not seen it. I also have Literacy at a Glance collection. It has the 5 pillars of reading, as you can see on the screen, plus one more that we talk about, and that's building knowledge, because the research behind building knowledge is undeniable. So, and if you want to know more about that research, I can send that to you, but it's there, and it truly is, like I said, undeniable. Oh, I got through those last few slides pretty quickly, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen, excuse me, and open it up for anybody who may have questions. If you want to be brave and want to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you might have, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Christy. That was wonderful.
You went by fast, sorry.
It does go fast. Questions. I don't think we had any pop up in the chat. I was trying to keep an eye on that, but
You can definitely have the presentation. I will send that to you, and you can send that out to everybody that was here.
perfect. Thank you. And we'll also be sending out, we'll send the presentation and the recording to everyone who registered to attend tonight. So I know sometimes things pop up when you plan to register or plan to attend and the night comes.
Absolutely.
I'll ask a question. I love how you said prevention when you were talking about intervention. I think that that is so important, especially with our young kiddos. When it comes to intervention, do you all give guidelines as to what that should look like at each level?
And that's a question that we get asked a lot. And our expertise in really space is that tier one. And what we're really focusing on is tier one. Now, I know a person who's on my team, Jan Sellers, who kind of created and developed the Kentucky MTSS.org website. She retired, and we begged her to come back to be on our team part-time to kind of help us, because although that is not our space, we talk about the reading improvement plan, and we wanted to make sure that we had an expert on our team to help us develop that plan, and she did help us develop that plan. So any kind of MTSS question that you have, I can put her. Nah, she's going to kill me. No, I mean, she loves supporting districts and helping think those kind of things through. So I'm going to put her email here in the chat and reach out to her and ask any question. But now, we have a HQIR, a recommended approved list for tier one, HQIRs, but a lot of people want to reach out and say, what do you think? And that's a good question. Like, that's a great question. But I think any kind of MTSS tier kind of question that you have, Jan Sellers would be a phenomenal resource. I put her email in the chat there.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I want to make sure we honor your time. So I will go ahead and share a couple more slides. And again, thank you, Christy. It was wonderful. Someone commented that they learn so much every time they listen to you speak, and I agree. Like you can never hear it enough times. And that's one of the reasons that I love the Reading League. The idea of a league of people, passionate about the same topic, literacy, and spreading that information constantly and sharing it again and again and again, because it takes time, especially when those aren't the ways that you learned to teach reading, and most of us were not. So so we hope that you will become a member of the Reading League Kentucky if you aren't already. Membership benefits include connection and collaboration, the league with passionate literacy educators and advocates, the opportunity to become involved in our work and advance the mission, early bird registration for our events. Like I said, this was our first one, but we are excited and still working to plan more events and looking towards checking in with our anyone who is a member about your interests. What things do you want to learn more about? What can we help with? How can we support you? Exclusive access to event recordings, and that will be somewhere on our website. So we'll have to work on that, but there will be a way for you to access. You'll go to our Reading League Kentucky website and you'll be able to access the recording of any event that we've had if you are a member. And then access to the state and national newsletters. And we'd just love to connect with you. This is a QR code that takes you to our website. We do have a website where we will continue to build and share information. We are on Facebook and Instagram, and then the email address there is just our general email address. But you could also contact any of us on the board. It's just our name at ky.thereadingleague.org. So, and I think we were going to drop the link in the chat to become a member if you'd like to do that. And then we have one more thing. Kim, you want to share our little giveaway that we planned?
Because don't we all love a giveaway? I mean, I remember when I was a principal, that was my favorite thing, is to be able to give something away. So Melissa had a great idea tonight. And hi, I'm Kim Aguilar. I'm the membership chair on our board. And we are giving away this latest addition to the Reading League Journal, which is jam-packed full of great information. So I did a randomizer, and Brandy Hale, you are selected to receive the journal tonight. So thank you for sticking it all out with us. Brandy, if you want to send your address in the chat, or you can email us directly, whatever you're most comfortable with, we will get that out to you.
Anything else before we close up? I just want to thank you guys for being here with us tonight. Like I said, we have been so excited to launch and to finally get to this part of it. Like, we've done all the hard work to get this going, and it's so great to finally be able to share information and bring people together. So I appreciate it. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya.